we are scared of the pain when actually the pain is crying for our attention and our help. And if we help it, it will help us much more. So we're running away and we are trying to escape a gift that is given to us to actually become bigger and better. And when we look at it this way, it's a game changer.
I'm CAVALHER, consciousness designer. Today I'm going to talk with Selima Sfar. She's a former tennis player, the first Arab woman to reach the top level, a TV broadcaster, the builder of a sports complex in Tunisia, promoter of sports in general, because this is her passion. And since I met her, I am impressed with how fast she moves in developing her consciousness and her spirituality. In my view, she is a spiritual leader. And today we are going to discuss the tennis career and sports in general and how that affects the inner world, the psychological implications and challenges of the people who work in this field. Hello, Selima.
Hello, I'm very happy to be here with you.
Oh, great.
And thank you for this beautiful introduction.
Thank you. It's an honor for me. Thank you. So, you have been telling me that people who work in sports, especially if they are working in high-performance sports like tennis, people face a lot of challenges. Can you illuminate us, showing what are these challenges?
Sure. In fact, what I often say is that life is a beautiful sport, and sport is one of the most beautiful schools of life. So, in my experience, and I have been a high-level athlete, I realized that competition and sport and being under the lights and having to deliver and having to succeed or win, or that's what competition is about. Life is a competition in general, but what elite sports does is actually it brings all these insecurities, whatever you call insecurities, and you talk about them as shadow, but it brings them all to the surface in a much bigger, clearer, and more intense way, emotionally speaking, because they would come in situations where, let's say, for instance, anybody who would know tennis what could be very challenging on an emotional and stressful level. In a match, there are some crucial points where if you are not able to handle yourself and what is happening and what are you feeling in an adequate way, in a good way, let's put it this way, then it will actually control you. And the outcome can be extremely difficult in a way where stress will take over and a lot of frustration and all these kind of emotions will be brought to you all in the same time in order for you to deal with it. So, and most of the times it is in front of TV, in front of people, in front of thousands, sometimes millions. And it's a field also where if you don't deliver, you're judged. So basically they're going to show you that you deserve the attention or the success or the money or the sponsor or the image or anything that goes with it only if you deliver, only if you win, only if you. So it is in a way a little bit what most live in childhood also. So it really does put on the surface all the kind of insecurities and broken parts of us that actually need our attention. And tennis has been now with much more perspective and work on my inner self. I just realized that everything that happened during my career and what I have been feeling and what I've been recovering and understanding and accepting little by little is actually all coming from my childhood, from the inner child. And it is, in fact, a huge opportunity, yeah.
Do you have some examples about things you felt playing tennis, these high-intensity emotions?
Oh yeah, there are so many of them, and you know, this is funny because most of them during this inner work, when we start to embrace whatever is, so embrace also kind of these emotions and the past and the pain and the broken parts and all these wounds in a way, without trying to put them under the carpet. We put them under the carpet because we think that it is the best way to deal with it in order not to feel the pain, because we don't want to feel pain. But they are there in order to teach us something and to thrive much higher and much bigger. Now I know that. But so many experiences came back to me that I forgot or wanted to forget during this work, even for my career. So many matches where I felt this sensation where the racket starts with weights like 25 kilos instead of 300 grams. This feeling where you cannot move, you're like freezed. You cannot move your body anymore. Your body is freezed. You cannot run anymore. You cannot react. And you're like in this kind of survival mode where everything is freezed. The sensation during matches where your throat is like painful and your mouth is dry, your hands are wet, and all these kind of sensations. And loneliness most of the time, or feeling powerless because you want to do something and you don't know how, because you don't have the tools and you don't know how to actually deal with these emotions that are kind of controlling you, because nobody taught you how to actually accept them and how to deal with them. So they control you, and the fact that they control you, you're going to lose the match, you're going to lose this, and you're going to actually hate yourself because you're like, why can I not, why is this affecting me? I cannot even hit the ball anymore. I'm so scared. Why is this controlling me? So you feel powerless. And then from the powerless, you have this anger. This anger is against you, against your own self. So it becomes self-hate and it's like a vicious circle about so many other emotions. And having this perspective about it today, really, tennis is one of the, and most athletes would agree, one of the toughest sport mentally, physically, and emotionally, especially. But saying that, it is one of the best opportunities of learning that's fast and well if you do have the tools. So that's why I always say it is one of the best schools of life, because it put us whatever we need to work on in order to thrive very fast, very clear, very big, and in fact the hardest thing is very intensely. We feel it so intensely, and that is the hard thing, but that's the challenging thing about it. So today, with perspective, I am doing this work, and I really feel like it will be such a great thing, not only for for athletes and youngsters to feel better and live their careers in a much happier way, but also an opportunity to make them grow as human beings. It is very important to share these tools.
This is a very interesting thing, because what you're saying now is distant from, let's say, the mainstream idea or mainstream worldview in our society, because as you know, people look at those who play tennis or are successful somehow from a perspective that considers them to be perfect people. So they don't feel anything, they don't have any problems, they have no insecurities, no self-hatred, because how could they self-hate if they are so successful? So all these other things that remain hidden from the public eye, people think that these things don't exist. And because of this worldview, we are taught that we need to reach that level. So I need to be a person who has no problems. I need to be a person who has no emotions. I have to be a person...
or only good emotions.
Or only good emotions, yes, true. So the standards created, I would not say are very high, I would say are unreal. Because if I said they're really high, I would say that this would be a good thing. It would be a good thing to not have emotions. It would be a good thing to have only positive emotions. It would be a good thing to be perfect, and this is not true. I don't think that this is a good thing. It would be unreal, for starters, but the way you put it, it turns things around, because you said that these things are opportunities for two sides of the story. On the one hand, they are an opportunity for the person to be even more successful than they are already. And on the other hand, it creates opportunity for consciousness development. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And yes, I don't think that there is any other higher purpose than actually evolving. When you say consciousness getting bigger and developing, meaning evolving, meaning improving, meaning growing. And I don't think there is a bigger purpose in life than that one. That plus being successful, but at the same time happy, because we can see so many successful people unhappy because they actually reach a certain level of what we call success in the society, and it happens a lot in sports. But then they do it through giving themselves the hardest time, and almost more through self-hate than self-love. So not many do, but a small percentage manages to actually succeed. Most of them don't succeed, and they're actually broken anyway because they're not using the fuel of joy and growth, but using another kind of energy to actually get there in order to prove something. And the wound is getting bigger and bigger still in the unconscious mind. So more importantly is to succeed while having a pleasant journey. Doesn't mean that there are no challenging moments, because I would be a liar. Even in this work there are some challenging moments, and I know very well about that. But then you're living them in such a different way, because the purpose of it is growth, and you know that it's like going through a storm, because you know that there is going to be some sunshine right after it, and the sunshine will be even more brighter than the one that you had before. And when you talked about perfection, and it's funny because I had this podcast yesterday in French about Osaka, and the sentence that came out of my mouth so naturally is because the guy was asking me about it. I said, and that's what you said, basically, we're in 2021, and most of the society really believes that being a champion, meaning being perfect. And what I said yesterday, and that's what Osaka is showing in such a beautiful way, and that's exactly what I would like people to look at more, because she's opening a magical door, even though she's getting so much blame and so much hard stuff, and she's only 23, is that you can be a champion, which she is. She actually won 4 Grand Slams, got #1 in the world, and today she's showing extreme vulnerability. Not a little vulnerability, extreme. She's talking about depression. She doesn't know when she's going to get on court again. She's crying. She didn't want to go to the press anymore. She's showing extreme vulnerability. So the message here, it is possible to be a great champion without being perfect. And that is something that still today, most people in people's mind, it's two things that don't go together. And so they don't want to accept the fact that a champion can be totally imperfect. And the reality of it, there isn't one champion who actually didn't become champion thanks to his imperfections first. That's a path and a process that not one champion managed to do without going through it. It is not possible. Just as much as it is absolutely not possible to experience courage without going through the fear. Because if not, it would not be courage.
So, if I understand, what we are saying here is that having a problem is good.
Yes, if you call it a problem, exactly. If having a challenging moment is good, because it is something coming in front of you to tell you, here, I'm making it easy. I'm not hidden anymore. I am here. Deal with me. Accept me. Look at me. And you'll see how much I'm going to give you. So there is so much power coming. We do really bloom from our wounds. So we are scared of the pain, when actually the pain is crying for our attention and our help. And if we help it, it will help us much more. So we're running away and we are trying to escape a gift that is given to us to actually become bigger and better. And when we look at it this way, it's a game changer.
There is arrogance in the human being, from my perspective, because we believe to be entitled to edit nature. So nature made us with emotions, with pain, with imbalance, with unconsciousness, and we decided that to be a good human being is to not have any of these things. So in a way, we consider ourselves better than the nature, or if people prefer theological terms, we consider ourselves to be better than God because we want to be in a way that we were not created to be. And because of this, there is this enormous amount of repression and the willing to create a reality that is unreal. So from this perspective, what we want to accomplish, what the society wants to accomplish, is impossible because it would be cutting out an enormous part of ourselves, emotions and consciousness, pain, and so on. So I think it's more intelligent to ask ourselves, why are these things here? Why do they show up? Instead of looking at ourselves and considering most of ourselves as some nature's flaw, I think it would be wiser to ask ourselves, why did nature do this in such a way? So why does nature want us to feel vulnerable or afraid or insecure? Yes. And I think that this is a good way. You mentioned Osaka, right?
Yes.
So if I understood it correctly, she's being criticized for being a human being, for having emotions.
You see, this is very important. Just before you continue, I just want to say to everyone who's listening that you don't know much about tennis. And that's brilliant for this debate, for this talk. Because Osaka has been number one in the world. Now she's number 3. She won 4 of the major tournaments, and she's just an amazing athlete. And today she's just can't cope anymore with with whatever her inner world and mirroring on the outside with all the pressure that this life can bring. And I have not been to her level, and even at mine, I can feel a lot of compassion, and I can understand, especially that I've been doing this work and I took this path. And she has been just absolutely killed by press, by people. And frankly, she has not been supported by many of the athletes neither, or at least not in a clear way, not in a public way, and that's why I did that podcast yesterday, because I really believe that it starts by us. So I couldn't say she has not been supported when I wanted first to give my support, because I understand. And that's why I spoke very clearly on that podcast. But yeah, that's exactly what she's judged for being human, exactly.
Well, let's use this example because you know me, I don't like very theoretical things. I prefer things that are rooted in reality. So let's look at this example. What is she being criticized for?
Well, to make it very short and clear, she obviously wins a lot of money. She's got a lot of prize money, endorsements and whatever, which is great for her. And she decided not to do press in Roland Garros and at the French Open for her own reasons. And of course, she's been criticized for that, because a champion is supposed to actually show a different image than crying or not doing press, because saying that they're depressed and they're showing they're emotionally weak. And she's supposed to give the example to the kids that, she's strong, and she's supposed to give that, this kind of perfection thing. And when they asked me that yesterday, what I said is actually, you can see it this way. Life is about perception and what kind of meaning you want to give to something. So there is another perception here. Perspective. You can also say, she's the first athlete that I know so far ever opened the door to say, actually, I am choosing my inner self, I am choosing my well-being, my emotional well-being before image, before media, before marketing, before sponsors, before anything. Doesn't matter if the world is going to just not agree with it, but I'm still going to choose whatever feels healthier for me. And at the moment, she is the only one who can be in her own shoes, knowing what kind of phone she has or not. Nobody can. And so she's the first one to say, and that is the best, I said, that is the best thing to show kids, better than, they have enough of perfection. So many athletes or whatever were there in all sports showing only the perfect side. Kids like that, it's enough of that image that they have. They already think, and I thought, in order to be great, you have to be perfect. It's exhausting because it's inachievable. So it's never good enough. It's exhausting. So I said, maybe she's the first one to give kids actually another perspective, which is you can be a champion without being perfect. That's fine. And that is, I think, the opportunity and the door that is at the moment open for us. And people resist it because they resist their own vulnerability.
I think that this is an extremely precious worldview. So I would like to say that again in different terms in order for us to have the opportunity to understand this from the perspective of the psychological structure.
Sure.
And since you are much closer to the situation and you know not only the world of tennis, but also her, and you have your own personal experience, you can be my guide here. If I go too astray, you'll tell me.
My honor.
Because yes, you're right. I don't know very much about tennis. I don't know even much about tennis. And this is exactly the point about the work I do. I work with the unconscious mind. Therefore, my goal is to not know, because this makes room for all the new knowledge and transcendental knowledge that we need in order to work with the unconscious mind. So let's analyze your words from the perspective of the psychological structure and dynamics, how consciousness works. First, let's look at the situation from the perspective of the society. So, since the society has defined that our conscious goal is to be perfect and without any negative emotion or insecurity or anything, when these things appear, when we find ourselves feeling fear or anxiety or insecurity or having some kind of psychological challenge, because this is not accepted, it is seen as something that should not be happening and is disturbing what should be happening, which is to be the perfect champion, to be the perfect person, to not have any challenges inside ourselves. But when you look at it from the perspective of the totality, from the perspective of wholeness, and from the perspective of our very nature as human beings, these things do exist. And when, as you have said, because Osaka is being brave enough to look at these things honestly,
Actually, to express them,
which is even more impressive.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because she's being able to express it, she is showing other people and herself the true nature of human beings and her being above the society's expectations. So I think that the best thing that we can learn with that, when we compare the two situations, when you look at it from the perspective of the society, our 3D world, this thing is a problem. But when you look at the same thing, don't change anything. You look at the same thing from the perspective of the whole being, from the perspective of wholeness, from the perspective of nature. This person is accepting and expressing the being, the truth of human nature. And she's been extremely honest and brave because of that. So what could be considered a failure from the perspective of the unconscious mind is the ultimate victory.
Said perfectly. The only thing which could be said is, and she's still young, is that for the moment she's expressing it, which is unbelievable, and she's expressing it very well, but she's struggling. She's not accepting it, because even in her movie, in her documentary and her interview, she's still saying, I don't know why I don't have the champion mentality. So she's still beating herself up because of the fact that she's feeling that, which is unbelievable. Usually when we beat ourselves up, we don't show it. We don't show that we are ashamed of these things because she's not accepting them totally yet. But yet she's expressing them authentically. When we ask her a question, she cannot hide it. She's just very authentic about it. So it's almost doing it on the reverse side. Like if I take my example, I've been hiding all these vulnerable sides, totally. And anybody would see me from the outside would see, wow, Selima, she's strong and this and that. But that's what I wanted people to see. And strength, of course, strong. We are strong when we embrace our insecurities. We are even stronger. But then this shield that we put on, the image that we want to put this mask for people to see us one way, is to protect ourselves from judgments in a way. But I've done this all my career, my whole career, when actually inside of me, I was full of insecurities and full of wounds and full of things like this. So for me, it's the opposite way I did it than Osaka. In order for me today to be able to talk about my vulnerable side in such a comfortable way, actually more than comfortable, we get to the point of doing it proudly, because we understand that these are the most precious parts of us, and they are actually the source of most power we have in us. So once we get to that point, we express it with so much pride, because that vulnerable part is the powerful part and is the beautiful part. But it took me many years of self-work and inner work and honesty and challenging moments, I have to say. And once I got there, I was able to express it, and I am now able to express it like I'm doing now, or in the podcast I've done, or other videos, very comfortably. For her, she's expressing it before really integrating and understanding what it is really, because she's still thinking that she's being weak and that she doesn't have the champion mentality. When the message is, for me today, to every single kid out there, or even adults who have inner kids inside of them anyway, so it's to all the inner kids, is that champion mentality is the mentality that will allow you to embrace and to face most of your vulnerabilities and insecurities. That's what a champion is. The champion is brave. A real warrior is brave, is courageous. And that is the definition of that, is going and being brutally honest to face these parts of you that are crying or need you, or these fears or these insecurities. Because if you don't face them, how can you deal with them? So for me, that's the champion mentality in life, in tennis, in everything.
I think that the important thing here is also to see how do you make the switch from one thing to another.
Yeah.
And
that's very interesting.
Yeah. The thing is that we always use a frame of reference. So in our 3D world, this visible material world, we reach agreements about what is to be the best, what is to be the greatest, what is to be successful, what is to be a good person. This is the one I like the most. It's the biggest illusion. And then we try to sever parts of ourselves in order to fit in this narrative. There is even a myth that talks about that. It's the bed of Procrusto. I think that's the name, if I am not mispronouncing it. That it was a monster in Greece, that took people and made them lie down in a bed, which is the bed of Procrusto. And when the body was smaller than the bed, he would pull the body until it fit the bed, even if he had to sever members from the body to do that. Or if the body was larger than the bed, he would cut parts of the body to fit in the bed.
That's a great image. It's cutting parts of ourselves in order to cope and to fit in a society that wants us to be in that kind of box. And so you're leaving behind many parts of you, separating yourself from them. So one day or another, it's going to get back haunting you.
It is very good that it comes back haunting you, because what is happening there is that nature is coming back to you and saying, listen, I am your creator. I did this. You are this way, and you are going to continue to be this way. You will have to bow to me. What we see as problems, what we see as things we would prefer not to have, are in fact the parts of ourselves that we have forgotten and that are coming back to not only, you said haunt us, but they are also trying to become parts of us again.
Reintegrate themselves, yeah.
Yes. And going back to the frame of reference, one marvelous thing that the unconscious mind does for us is to provide another frame of reference. And the most precious thing about this reference, this frame, is that it is 100% yours. It is unique. What the work with the unconscious mind does is take you towards uniqueness. So the unconscious mind shows you exactly who you are and who you should be in comparison to yourself, not to what the society is bringing to you. And when you fully become that person, you have undescribable power.
Yeah. It's this very simple sentence: to be who you really are. And to be who you really are is integrating all the parts that from the day you're born, the society or your entourage or your parents or the family or your friends or situations of life made you unconsciously kind of repress and put aside and disconnect with them. So you fragmented with them in a way. And becoming whole again is getting part by part out of the unconscious and embrace it consciously. Since it's on the unconscious and we cannot see it from the inside yet, so the outside is going to be a mirror to tell you, here I am. And the outside situation will create a certain emotion that's going to be so uncomfortable, but it has to be uncomfortable in order to attract your attention. And so basically it's almost saying, if it is uncomfortable, there is the gift. There is where you can look and find a part of you that you didn't know you repressed, and you can actually embrace again. And that's one more piece of the puzzle to becoming whole and great even more. And that's why we say the better, the better. Each piece coming back to the puzzle is bringing you closer home to your whole self. And the only way to know that piece, the emotional GPS is going to be at some point an uncomfortable emotion coming from an outside situation. So pay attention. It's not to hurt you. It is there to actually, because it's crying for you to actually open your arms.
Yes, look how different this worldview is, because again, in our 3D world, everything that is outside the expectations of the society is a problem that should not exist. Whereas when you move towards a 4D perspective, being the fourth dimension, the unconscious mind, so our 3D world plus the unconscious mind, this is 4D, having a problem or having a challenge or having a dark emotion is a bliss.
It's true. It's so true. I'm laughing because it cannot be more true, what you're saying. And with experience with life, anyone who would go through that path will laugh also, because we were remember saying that most of the times that's now the reflex. Okay, what is it trying to teach me? What part of me needs to be embraced here? So it becomes a reflex to go there. But in my case, it's still sometimes the thing is, oh shit, now it's going to be an uncomfortable moment again. I know it's going to be for the good. Okay, let's embrace it.
There is another kind of morality in our society today, that is the spiritual morality, which is kind of a monster, because spirituality should be something that destroys morality, but instead they are creating a new one. That is that life needs to be only good. So we can't see the truthness in pain. Like, we are forbidden also by spirituality to not feel pain. So you are there in terrible pain, but you are fooling yourself saying, oh no, I'm okay. Let's do some positive thinking here, and that's okay. It's going to disappear. So I am very happy that you admit that pain is painful, which is something obvious, but our world doesn't do that.
Exactly. It's just that you go through it with a different perspective, and you give it a different meaning, and you know the goal that it has behind, and it is so clear. It is definitely a goal of love and self-love. So embracing that pain is actually getting closer to loving more yourself, and understanding the part that needs your love. But when you talk about spirituality, and this is so right, and that's why it became dangerous to talk about spirituality, because so many used it in a way that can be wrongly understood, and that's why, to me, it's almost more makes more sense to actually call it authenticity. I would call spirituality. I would change the word spirituality for authenticity, because when you're authentic also about the bad, or what we call bad anyway, right?
I really like this proposition.
Nice.
I think that this is a breakthrough, really.
It works for me, at least. So it avoids finding excuses, from the mind. Because authentic is authentic, whatever that is, whatever arises.
Wow. I see a fifth dimensional creation rising just now. This is really clever. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's work on that from now on.
Good.
Great. But can you tell us a story? Because you see, when we hear people telling their stories, we really understand. So we have seen already here how Osaka's vulnerability was seen as, or is seen as, a problem, and you're presenting a version of reality where it is not, where it is authenticity. Can you tell us a story about yourself? Because you said in the beginning of the conversation that you had many things happening in your childhood that reflected at a later point, including concrete situations that these things created. People tend to believe that the unconscious mind is something very abstract, like a way of seeing things, when it is, in fact, a very material thing, because the things that exist in our unconscious mind manifest themselves in very concrete ways, in relationships, in life situations, in our own behaviors. So can you tell us the story of how something you experienced in your childhood became unconscious to you and created concrete problematic situations, and what happened when you saw these things?
Yeah, I must have many, many examples. I'm going to have to try to choose one that would... I will speak about one that I think would be clear, and maybe many people would relate to something like this. Of course, I grew up, I have loving parents, but nobody is perfect, and today I understand that everybody does the best of their abilities, and at the end there are situations that happen in our childhood that would give us a meaning to something, and we feel it truly and deeply as kids. And in my example, I always grew up, and I'm saying this from full responsibility, and today with a lot of wisdom. I'm looking at it from the outside. I grew up in a way thinking that the only way for me to be seen and to be loved as much as I wanted, because I didn't feel that I was given enough attention or enough love or enough, and I felt powerless about it, and I felt sad. It was actually very, very fast. I understood. I started to be very good at tennis at 6, 7, 8. I was already winning pretty much everything in Tunisia, and I realized that every time I win, I have that kind of extra attention, which to me was like kind of extra love. I felt like I was actually feeling existing more, having like forcing in my place, so fitting in, like the example you gave earlier. So I tried to fit in using that, and I saw that in the same time I made my mom happier when I was winning. So I had also that belief, unconscious belief, that not only I can only be happy if I'm loved, if I am successful as a tennis player, if I do something exceptional, basically, in order to get that love and to get that attention and my place. And also, it will make my mom happy, and then she can make me happy, because I need to make her happy. So I don't deserve to be happy unless I make her happy and unless I am very successful. So everything became related subconsciously to that in my mind, even though I love tennis. And it is my real passion, but then it became like a job mission in order for me to feel loved and to feel like I deserve to belong, first of all in my family and then in the world in general. And also in order to, I've put that weight on my shoulders to make my family, my parents, my mother specifically happy.
And you consider that making all these people happy and about your success, you consider this to be an unconscious thing for you until some time?
Yes, totally. Well, yes. I mean, it's layers. I've been working on myself for a long time now, but definitely at that time, when I was a teenager, it was totally unconscious. All I know is that a kid is smart enough to feel things without knowing clearly. All I know is that I knew and I felt that every time I would win, she was happy, my mother, and every time I would lose, she would get kind of a little bit depressed and down. I remember very well my sister telling me, and this came back to me only lately, because I guess I repressed it. I remember my sister telling me, she says, Selima, we can't live like this anymore. I mean, mom's emotional life is depending on whether you win or you lose. So it's going like, it's a roller coaster. And for us, it's like very, very difficult. And she was right. But then that put me in like a kind of a subconscious additional pressure, is that not only I need to win to make my mom happy, but also for my brother and my sister, for them to actually to be happier, because they cannot keep dealing with all this roller coaster coming from my mom, whether if I lose or if I win. So imagine that pressure.
Yes, and this is a good example because it removes the idea that the unconscious mind is abstract. It expresses itself in very concrete ways, like the happiness of your mother, the happiness of your siblings, and also the enormous impact that this would have in your performance in the court because of the psychological pressure on you. You think that this is right?
Totally. So, and because this was in my mind, I had to do that. The responsibility was so big that I couldn't fail. So basically, I had to sacrifice whatever needed to be sacrificed on the way in order to do that, in order to achieve that, in order not to go back as a failure. And of course, well, that's exactly when you start separating yourself from so many parts of you, where you don't treat them as a priority or as the most important, and you sacrifice them in a way. And that is a sad thing, and that is really, I say it and I do feel it with every cell of my body. It is a sad thing because you don't know you're doing it, but it is actually the inner kid that is felt left behind.
This idea is amazing, because you just said you don't know you are doing this. You don't know you are behaving in this way. So when you say that, you are saying the unconscious mind is operating.
Exactly. And while you're not conscious, the sad thing, once you become conscious, and that's the embracing part of it, and that's also embracing the pain that goes with it, is when you actually realize fully consciously the parts of you, the little Selimas that you have left behind at that time, that you sacrificed. And that is these parts who, whenever you feel sad or lonely or whatever, these are the parts that are feeling that emotion, and that's embracing it.
Yes.
So, and I've been going through that, and each one of them has been extremely touching to me. Every part that I reintegrated, and that is self-love. That's coming back to wholeness. But in order for you to do that, it is important to actually be conscious of them and feel the pain of every one of these parts. So basically feeling the pain of every one of this inner kid, of this little Selima, feeling it at that time, reliving it and re-feeling it exactly the same way that this part is feeling, but this time with consciousness, not unconsciously. So as an observer, but that does not take away any of the pain. So the pain is here, but you see it with consciousness. So actually there is this space. You understand, if you can see it and feel it from a little space, then you know you're not it, but you're embracing it. And yeah, it is very overwhelming. It's extremely overwhelming, but in the same time, it's extremely beautiful.
Yes.
It's like when you watch movies and we cry at the end because I don't know, two people reconnect together and it's happy ending, and we cry. It's kind of the same thing, but with your inner parts, really. That's how I see it. It's the first time I have this image, but yeah, it's a good one.
Yes, it is. I think that when you say it's overwhelming, and it can be, I see why people are so scared of dealing with these things, these topics, and especially they are scared about processes of consciousness development or alike, because they want to not experience that pain. But the question I ask myself and I ask people is, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to feel pain looking at a question once, or do you prefer to not look at it and these things are going to hijack your life and reality over and over and over again?
Which will make you feel pain anyway. So would you like to feel pain for something that makes sense in order to actually grow and become greater from it and actually be happier and whole? Or you want to keep feeling pain because you're unconscious and because you don't want to have the courage to face something, and that pain, instead of embracing it for a certain period of time, want to reintegrate this part again, but then feeling that pain through all your life because you just don't want to face it and reintegrate that part of it. And to come back to tennis or to sports, and that is where, because any athlete would be listening to this, okay, so how can that help us for our career? In my example, since you asked me and I shared enough of my vulnerability now,
yes,
these parts that are suppressed, that are actually sacrificed in a way and left behind, at some point they're going to start also blocking you because they feel angry. So you're going to go on court, and in the important moments, well, this part is going to be, you know what, you never gave me the love or the confidence, you never embraced me, so how can I perform in a confident way now? You know? And so it's that exact same part who would come out when you cannot move anymore, you're on survival freezing at that moment, and you cannot perform anymore because the energy is not the one that you want because it's been suppressed. And so that part of you, like, you know what? No way. I'm not going anywhere anymore. So that's the way it's going to block it. Once you embrace it, there isn't anymore this survival mode anymore, because it's part of you. It doesn't need anymore to actually get your attention from the outside and block you and sometimes sabotage you even. Because, and fair enough. I mean, it's been left behind, sad, alone, whatever. in pain without even looking at it. And then when you need it, you're like, come back now, and now I need you, and I use you, and then I put you back in the corner. At some point, it's going to say no. No way. I want to be integrated again. I want to be loved. And then, you know what? I'll give you whatever you want. You will see how powerful I am. So that's also what happens on the tennis court or on any other aspects of life. But I'm talking about sport because I really believe that it's a huge platform and such a superb way to put things in a very clear aspect. So this is something that I know that if I had these tools when I was a tennis player, I know that my career would have been different, at least in a way where I would have enjoyed it much more to start with, where I would have been conscious of every step and every opportunity of where I can grow as a person. And if I do grow as a person, I will be a better athlete, without a doubt, since we say sport is so much connected to mental and emotional aspects. And that's why now every champion has their team of psychologists and things like this. So it's totally linked. I didn't have it during my career. Maybe it's part of my path because I'm supposed to actually share it and help others. Today, it's not about knowing what to do. It's not about knowing. We know. We know that the aspect of mental and emotional aspect is very important. Psychological aspect is important. Everybody on this planet would agree with that. Now the point is not about knowing. It's about how. It's about knowing and how do we get there. This is really the most important question, and that's why I want to share more and more. I am still on the path, like every one of us, but I know that through some tools and through this work with you also, people like you who give these tools, I know that it is feasible. And I really want to help by opening more this door and getting more attention on the how to help people, to help kids, to help kids that would actually have a better life and grow as better people. People want to change the world, but they never ask how. And it starts by each one of us, because no one could share how without first experiencing it. Sometimes it starts with a seed, it starts with somebody hearing this conversation and thinking, oh, that actually resonates. It doesn't need to be the mind thinking. We know when it resonates. We know when it feels right. And if it does, then, at least just the sentence, you do not need to be perfect to be a champion. Only that sentence in the mind is a huge seed.